You're going to sit down with LSU quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. But before we get him in, let's go ahead and talk about LSU. Look, I just want to rattle through their schedule. Do you have anything to update us on Brian Kelly's press conference or anything LSU related from this morning?
Well, Brian Kelly said he thinks this is his deepest team that he's had at LSU. He also said that, look, we talk about expectations. They went 10-3, and he fired his whole defensive staff. But he's very excited about Bo Davis. Look, and again, the interview with Garrett Nussmeier is fantastic. Really excited for him. And one of the guys that stuck through it, didn't get in the transfer portal, bided his time, waited his time. But I think Brian Kelly feels like this team's going to be more balanced. But that's something we've talked about on Crain and Company all the time, Dave.
All right, let's talk about LSU's schedule, the first 5 games up until that first bye week. We know they start with Southern Cal. That's neutral site in Vegas. Over, exactly. All right, so we got an awesome opener for LSU, which they seem to play a cool opening schedule every single year, which is awesome. You got Nicholls State, South Carolina in Columbia. South Carolina, you'll notice, has a lot of these really cool home games this year. UCLA in Baton Rouge, kind of a cool non-conference game for a lot of us college football fans, even though we'll have to see what UCLA is going to look like with Chip Kelly having left this year. And then South Alabama, Mr. Crain's alma mater, and that's in Baton Rouge. Obviously, the highlight there, though, is Southern Cal in the opener.
Yeah, look, LSU, when you look at their schedule, when you look at what they return up front, I mean, you got to feel good. It's a big game against USC. It's always a big game when you play USC, and obviously I'm talking about Southern California out there. But I do feel like they have the advantage going into this game as opposed to there were a lot of question marks last year going into the Florida State game, again, round 2 against Florida State. But I feel like it's an exciting enough schedule and it's also winnable enough where you can be double excited if you're an LSU fan. And like my brother just alluded to, probably going to take the over in that first game. But having that type of schedule before you get into the SEC with a quote-unquote new quarterback, I think is almost the perfect recipe to maybe get that defense some confidence as well, because USC's starting a new quarterback in Miller Moss, who went off in the bowl game, and that's great. But we got to see how they are up front. We know LSU's had problems on the defensive side of the ball. So I think it's almost the perfect storm for them heading into SEC play in that game at South Carolina, as you mentioned.
All right, so Blaine, on paper, both programs are starting new quarterbacks. But
Correct.
Like Jake said, I mean, it doesn't feel like Garrett Nussmeier is really that new, who we're about to sit down and talk with. I mean, as many reps as you're going to see from a first-year starter. Meanwhile, Southern Cal's not going to return Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Caleb Williams. He's going to be suiting up for the Chicago Bears. Miller Moss is going to take over. What are your thoughts on that game and just those first 5? I mean, realistic that LSU could start 5-0 before the first bye week.
Yeah, well, you look at this game, the winner's going to be whose defense comes and performs the best. And it's going to be interesting to LSU, in my opinion. You bring in Missouri's defensive coordinator and Blake Baker, who's the kind of guy who lets guy run free. They're aggressive in how they coach. And I think that's a really good thing for Harold Perkins Jr., who's coming back at linebacker. He doesn't have to think as much. He just gets to react, and that's what your best players want to do. It's going to be interesting. What's been the knock on Lincoln Riley? It's been defense. Defense. They got rid of their DC. I'll see how they perform. Miller Moss, both these guys, in my opinion, I wouldn't be surprised if they're Heisman talks at the end of the season. It would depend on how many games USC loses. We always talk about that. But if Nuss can do half of what Jaden Daniels does from last year, LSU will be in the 12-team playoff.
He could do half of what he did and still be in the Heisman Trophy conversation, to be honest. That's how great
I do want to kind of. Yeah, I do want to kind of put a bow on it, too. And when we talked to Garrett, you'll see I asked him about the differences in him and Jaden Daniels. What I find fascinating about that USC-LSU game, the opener, and we're going to talk about Garrett Nussmeier and all the losses at wide receiver that LSU had, even though we know they have talented players to replace them. I think LSU's offensive line and that run game against USC with question marks on the defensive side of the ball, even after getting rid of Alex Grinch, who's kind of been the bugaboo or the weakness of Lincoln Riley throughout his head coaching tenure. I think early LSU's going to play a game of let's line up and find out how man you are up front, because we know you can make the case LSU has the best offensive line in the country with what they have returning. So it's going to be a different brand of style of offense. And again, we're going to get into that with the interview. But what I'm fascinated to see is Garrett Nussmeier's transformation throughout the year, being able to lean on that run game, which opens up what, Cone? That play-action pass. I think LSU may end up being one of the deadly play-action pass teams in the country when it all gets said and done because of that offensive line and that downhill run game with what they have returning in the running back room as well.
All right, here's the middle part of their schedule. So LSU, after that first bye week, they get Ole Miss and they get them at home. That's going to be a theme that's coming here. A lot of these big games for the Tigers are at home. So Ole Miss and Baton Rouge, they go on the road to Arkansas in Fayetteville, and then they go on the road to Texas A&M in College Station before that second bye week. So Ole Miss, Arkansas, Texas A&M. Thoughts on that stretch?
Well, David, to be honest with you, obviously they're going to be excited about the Ole Miss game. They're going to be excited about every game. But what would worry me if I was an LSU fan, it's not just the fact that Ole Miss may have the best team that they've had in a long time, and they've had some pretty decent teams, but it's that game against South Carolina on the road before they play Ole Miss. That's a game you cannot overlook. Look, South Carolina's they were awful up front on both sides of the ball last year, if we're going to look each other in the eyes and be honest. But that is still not a place. I've coached up there in Columbia. It is a madhouse. I don't know how South Carolina is going to start out. Lenora Sellers is going to be interesting. But you cannot fall in the trap, and I know Brian Kelly knows this. I know Garrett Nussmeier knows this. I know their whole staff knows this. You cannot overlook that South Carolina game and try and play the Ole Miss game before that Saturday. Because if you can get by South Carolina, you handle business against Ole Miss, you should be better than Arkansas. Who knows if Sam Pittman will still be there by then. Now we start looking at, all right, the playoff contention is a legitimate thing, and you're going into another bye week to be able to rest and get healthy.
So after that second bye week, Blaine, Alabama in Baton Rouge.
Woo!
Okay, we saw Brian Kelly's first year 2 years ago, how that one ended. Go on the road to Florida. Again, could be a sneaky game. I mean, Billy Napier is going to be fighting for his job by that point, and it's still going to be the Swamp. Vanderbilt at home in Baton Rouge, and then Oklahoma to end the season at home in Baton Rouge.
That Oklahoma game is extremely interesting to me. That could decide a lot of things. Right now, if you were to look at it, you have more confidence, all right, at Ole Miss at home or Alabama at home. Walking in that game, if you're LSU, what do you feel better about? Because me, right now, Ole Miss has a better roster than Alabama. I think, honestly,
I think
after the transfer portal, after what they did on defense, this Ole Miss team, they're not going to be the same talent on offense, but they're reminding me they don't have to be phenomenal on defense to win what they want to win. It reminds me of that LSU team back in the day. If you look at that team with Justin Jefferson and all these guys, that defense wasn't great, but they were good enough.
They were still top 40, what? Top 45,
top 40. If Ole Miss can be a top 25, a top 30 defense, they'll have a good enough roster and a good enough Lane Kiffin calling the plays, bring it back Jackson Dart and all the talent they have outside to make a run in the playoff.
Well, here's what I want to say to that. I think it's pretty even. I think. I don't know if it leans one way or the other, Blaine, because when I look at Ole Miss, we don't know how Ole Miss is going to handle these sky-high expectations. For the first time since I can remember. And I wonder if it's going to affect the way Lane Kiffin calls plays. Are they going to go for it on 4th and 7 as they usually have now that they have enough bullets in the chamber to be able to win games even playing small ball or not taking big risks? Or do you dance with the one that brought you? I'm interested to see how this Ole Miss team handles not only high expectations, but legitimate and expectations that have a foundation of truth. They could win the conference legitimately. They could make the college football playoff legitimately. They could make a run with this roster at the national championship legitimately. But I've seen the way Alabama's players have handled that, even under a new coach with Kalen DeBoer. I know how Alabama's going to handle high expectations or big games. So is that going to be a feather in the cap of Alabama compared to Ole Miss? Or is Ole Miss veteran enough to be able to go in there and keep it together even before that game so it's as hyped up as possible? I think when you look at both these rosters and both these teams, there's actually a lot of similarities. Now, we can sit here and say the Ole Miss defense may be better than the Alabama's defense. I've got to wait and see that before I can say that. I think their players are better. They have a better roster than they've had in a long time. Then both offenses got tons of talent all over the place. You got quarterbacks that can do multiple things that are versatile. So I think it's pretty even. And just the fact that I am saying that playing Ole Miss and Alabama is basically even in that regard shows you the shift that we have seen in the Southeastern Conference. And I'll give you one more caveat. I think this game is huge for LSU for another reason. It feels to me like lately LSU and Ole Miss have switched places, right? Not saying that Ole Miss has been this dominant defense, but it used to be that LSU was a very well-balanced, well-rounded team that could beat you in multiple ways, and Ole Miss was just an offensive juggernaut that tried to outscore you. Well, the last 2 years, the script's kind of been flipped. Even look at what Ole Miss did last year. You lead the SEC in turnover margin. You're top 3 in the SEC in backfield disruption rate. So to me, I think LSU needs to regain their identity a little bit against a team that I felt like pulled the Monstars and stole the soul out of the other one.
Well, either way you cut it, I think the 3 toughest games they have there, Alabama, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma, all of those are going to be at home in Baton Rouge. The next 2 toughest, I'd say Texas A&M and Southern Cal. One of those is neutral site. The other one is on the road. So, look, a favorable schedule if you're an LSU fan. Now it's time to get to Jake sitting down with LSU starting quarterback Garrett Nussmeier.
We are here with LSU starting quarterback, finally getting his opportunity to be the guy, Garrett Nussmeier. Garrett, first off, man, congratulations, on the success that you've had, the success you're going to have, and taking some time with us. I just want to ask you, man, I'm sure you've been asked a million times. You bided your time, and now you get your opportunity. I just want to know, what has it been like knowing that you're going to be the guy, really getting to go through an off season, being the guy, just, how different that is, and I know you've been preparing this for your whole life.
Yeah, it's been everything. I'm very excited for the opportunity that's coming. And it started just with building relationships with my teammates even more. It's the most important part about playing alongside guys is knowing them as persons, not just players. And so, I'm very blessed. And I thank God every morning I wake up that this is the life I get to live right now. And so I'm excited for the fall.
Yeah, and obviously, you and Jaden are a different style of quarterbacks. And something I noticed about your game is you really do a good job of extending the play inside the pocket. We talk about guys getting outside the pocket, making somebody miss, and finding somebody when the play breaks down in the scramble drill. But just talk about the importance of keeping your eyes down the field, how using your feet within the pocket can be just as deadly as extending the play outside the pocket.
Yeah, I think that, the way that I play the game, I'm definitely a pass-first type of guy. And, I'm looking to pass, not necessarily looking to run when things break down. So, I think there's plays to be made when the play breaks down, and you don't necessarily have to be outside the pocket for those to happen. When you play against a lot of different types of defenses like we do, there are often times where they're only rushing 3, and you can make plays back there and give your receivers time to get open, even if it's not the designated route. So I think that's where that comes from.
Well, you're a coach's son. I'm a coach's son. I'm sure we probably had similar upbringings.
Yeah.
I think everybody thinks a quarterback, you got to read the coverage and make the throw. Well, it's not just that. You got to set the protections, and you have an offensive line, thank goodness for you, that is about as good of an insurance policy as you can have. What was harder, or what is harder, checking the protections, being able to see what's probably coming, or being able to read what's going on in the secondary when the plays happen?
Yeah, I would think it all ties together. I wouldn't say one part's more difficult than the other. Obviously, like you said, with the offensive line that we have right now, it makes my job a little easier, and so that's awesome. Makes me feel a lot safer. But I would say that it ties together, because we also have some unbelievable receivers that are very, very good at getting open.
Yeah, all right, so the NCAA football game drops today. Garrett Nussmeier, quarterback at LSU. First play you're on offense. I'm guessing you would probably play as yourself.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
What's the first play you're calling?
Some type of pass. That's for sure. The ball's going in the air, so we'll see.
Definitely. Do you remember? I know you're younger than me, but do you remember the old school game in NCAA 14?
Oh yeah. I used to play it every day. So.
Yeah. You excited? Excited as everybody else is? Well, man, I'm. If you could say one thing to LSU fans, right? Kind of wrapping it up right here. What would you say going into a year where super explosive on offense last year, but you guys got weapons this year too, including yourself?
I'd say every year's a different year. We can't get caught up in the past. What I would say to the fans is, just give us an opportunity to show you what we've been working on. So, and go Tigers.
Definitely. Well, week 1, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a showdown, Garrett.
Yes,
good luck to you, man. Congratulations
and
hanging in there. And
yes, sir.
For your
Appreciate
time.
it. Thank you.
All right. Make sure you subscribe.
All right, there we have it. LSU starting quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. Jake, great interview, son.
You look like you've done this before.
Hey, yeah, look, you can tell how excited he is about finally being the guy. That's why I wanted to open up with that first question. And then, we get into the nuts and bolts, being a coach's son. I thought his answer, what was harder, setting the protections or going through your reads when you're in the pocket? I thought that was a fantastic answer. And got to get the question about the NCAA college football video game, because you're going to play as yourself if you're Garrett Nussmeier. And obviously his answer to what first play he's going to run is every quarterback's answer. We're throwing it.
100%. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Make sure you hit that like, hit that subscribe button. It really helps out the show. We're giving you all the insights on college football. There's no better place to get it than here at Crain & Company.